Hi, this is Jay Hemmel. Welcome to the deep dive in collaboration with Investopedia. We get a lot of questions from advisors. Should they do a podcast? How do they position themselves as experts? And I don't think we could have a better person on the show today to help advisors think about that than Paul Herdtner, the CEO of Avra. Paul, thanks for coming on the show.
You bet, Jay. It's good to see you.
Give the viewers a little bit about you. You have a very interesting background that I think normally I try to cut people off, as you know, because they come on the show and they want to give like a 5 minute dissertation about what they've done in their life, which pisses me off. But I think your background's really interesting.
Well, I'm flattered you find it interesting, and I'll try to keep it shorter than 5 minutes to not chew up so much of the show. First, a quick primer on Avra Group Consulting. We like to solve difficult problems for clients, and whether that is a crisis and issues management situation, whether it is a content strategy that includes high-end video production, whether it is media training, or even, for example, something we've bolted onto Avra, which is cloud cost optimization. We like to take these really thorny problems and sort them out for clients. This is our second year in business, but it really is a confluence, this company, of all of the things that I've done professionally over the last 30 plus years. The first half of my life and my career was spent in the television news business. So I was the guy when you flipped on the news at 5, 6, or 11, welcome to the show. In 2009, I transitioned out of the TV news business and went into corporate communications and public relations. My first job out of the TV news business was running PR and corporate communications for a company that was at that time one of the biggest RIAs in the country. It was the mutual fund store, the company that Adam Bold started. A couple of years later, I was the head of corporate communications for American Century Investments, the asset management firm. I've also done the same job for some other large companies. So I'm taking these two bits of careers and kind of mashing them together and creating Avra.
It's awesome. Well, in you and I talk a lot about how advisors need to differentiate themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what part of the point of the show is to help advisors better run their business,
Mm-hmm.
or home offices better run their businesses, and to support advisors. How do you think when you look through the lens of what you do, how do advisors better position themselves as experts to try to differentiate themselves? Because as you know, if you're an end customer, you're getting prospected by 10, 12, 15 wealth management firms, advisors at any point in time. How do they differentiate themselves? My belief is they need to position themselves as an expert. And how do they do that?
I think you find the thing that you want to be an expert about or that you are an expert about and really exploit that. And I think one of the best ways today to do that is to basically be your own newsroom. It doesn't cost a lot of money today to be somebody who creates content for yourself. And this doesn't have to be something necessarily that would not look out of place on a network news broadcast, but something better than, for example, a selfie iPhone kind of video. It doesn't cost a ton of money. You don't need to make a huge investment in lights and equipment, but you can take what you have and take the knowledge that's in your brain and put it out there so that you're easily found, so that when people stumble across your content, they realize, okay, this is this really smart person, this is really great insight. Or also using it as outbound collateral when you want to do prospecting, or if you want to reassure clients, the existing clients, that you in fact do know what you're talking about. Maybe it's market updates. Maybe it's January 5th of every year you put out this is what we think is happening with the markets. But I think differentiating yourself from your competition is critical in any business. But in a market that's as flooded as the FA and RIA world, you've got to take those things that you know and show the world that you're really good at that.
Now, how do you think about? I got a question this morning on a call before we were taping this about search engine optimization.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, I love when people use acronyms all the time. You get in a room, people want to sound smart.
Yeah,
What are you doing for SEO? It's like
right.
I have no idea. How are you thinking about how firms should think about search engine optimization, if they should at all?
Well, certainly you should, because everybody who has a website, and that really should be everybody who has a business, to a degree, you are beholden to the spiders that crawl all over the internet through Google. You want to make sure that you're showing up the right way. There was a time not that long ago where companies and marketing firms were jamming every keyword they could think of into blogs, for example, or into the copy that you have on your website. That's not the way to do it anymore. And in fact, it hasn't been the way to do it for a good number of years at this point. And frankly, when they were doing it that way, it didn't read well because it was basically written for the Google spiders and not for a human. You got to appeal to a human first. And so you make sure you're putting content out there. You make sure that your website spells out who you are, what you do, how folks get in touch with you, and then let the organic messaging carry the day from an SEO standpoint.
Yeah, and then just switching off of that, obviously you're on this podcast. You've been involved and been helpful to me doing this podcast over the last 4 years. I get the question a lot, like I've made this up as we go, which most viewers could figure that out and they watch the show. What do you think about what do you think about should advisors be doing podcasts? Should they be doing these kinds of things to differentiate themselves?
I'll answer that in a second, but let me clear it up for the record. You're really good at this, especially for a guy who has no on-camera training to speak of. You're somebody who gets out there and you know how to be yourself in front of a camera, and that is really valuable. So to answer the question, if an advisor is considering doing a podcast, uh, let's start by saying you're in good company because last I checked, there were literally millions of podcasts in the United States alone. So podcasts have become the new blog where a lot of people just realize, okay, there are a lot of podcasts and I should be there too. It's just a natural reaction by a lot of folks. That's what blogs were 10, 12 years ago. And I would argue with folks back then, go ahead and do a blog if you have something to say and you know how to create an editorial calendar so that it's not a hodgepodge and you do it every week for a month and then nobody hears from you for 3 months. The podcast world is the same way. Again, millions of different podcasts. But when you start breaking it down to the number of podcasts that have done 10 episodes or more, the number shrinks considerably. For too many people, it's a one-off. Let's just see what we can do. When you look at the number of podcasts that started a handful of years ago, especially during the pandemic, and they're still in production today, shrinks the number way down. So you're going from 3, 4 million down to maybe 100, 150,000, which is still a lot. Don't get me wrong. But your competitive set is not this monstrous number that people think of when they think of podcasts. So if you do want to do it, great. Here's what I would say. Make sure you have a differentiated point of view. And that could be a whole variety of things. I believe that if you can get granular, you can find that little niche audience that could really grab onto you and become super devoted to what you're saying. And make sure you're doing it consistently. It doesn't necessarily have to be every Tuesday at 10 o'clock that you publish, but make sure that you have a certain editorial and calendarized cadence to it so that if you do develop an audience, they know when to find you and how to expect to see you.
Well, and I've always said, yeah, you can't do things as a hobby. You can't do a podcast as a hobby. You
Mhm.
have to have great guests. Our guests carry the show. Other than you, you're the anomaly on this thing. But so I like to give you grief. The as you know on the show, my last question is, what's the one thing you think people aren't paying enough attention to in the industry? I think I want to tweak it a little bit because of your expertise.
Mhm.
What's the one thing you think advisors or wealth management firms aren't paying attention enough to and how they build content or the things they should be thinking about?
I think they should first realize that once you think through what you want to say and how you want to say it, it can sort of fall into place. And I know a lot of guys are like, look, I got enough to worry about. I don't have time to shoot videos and edit the videos. Okay, if that's the case, but you still want to get out there, call somebody, email somebody for help. There are a lot of companies out there. I'm not certainly alone in that world that can help you kickstart your ideas or put those ideas into motion from a production standpoint. But when I look at the websites of RIAs around the country, There are some of them that look like they were created as a GeoCity site in 1996. And
Hmm.
with so much of the industry focused on that generational wealth transfer, if your website is not conveying the message that we are modern, we understand you, we get it, I think the chances of those investments being sticky with you go down precipitously. So if you can construct your website in a way that conveys that modern sense for that next generation, I think it'll help tremendously. And you go, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, let's not make the entire website like an encyclopedia where it's just nothing but words. Make sure you've got visuals. Make sure you have some moving pictures. And it doesn't have to be video. Pictures can move almost like little GIFs. They don't always have to be video. I'm a big proponent because of my background in well-produced video. I think that every website probably should have a page where it is a corporate overview video. Who are we and why do we exist? But then also 3 or 4 videos either about your people, your company culture, or your offerings, because then you become a one stop shop for somebody who's looking around for help. And they look at you and they go, okay, they tell their story well, and at least it might pique their interest to hit that contact us button, which is really the win. Once you can get them reaching out to you, you know they're curious, they're interested, and at that point, it's your job to sell them through. But the website has to convey that and has to grab that interest right off the bat.
Well, and I've always said this, owning businesses, we own 11 today. It is you're never going to win a business with your website, but you're going to lose business because
Mhm.
you may not even get an at bat
Right.
when somebody comes and doesn't see a digital footprint that makes sense
That's
for
exactly right.
how they want to engage with you. So
Mhm.
I think people blow it off. Oh, I'm never going to win a client on that. Yeah, but you're probably losing ones that you never knew that you
Mhm.
were losing because they're never going to hit that contact us button.
Yeah, and there's no way to quantify that, but you better believe if your website doesn't look like you're with it and modern and with the times, people are going to disregard you.
Well, Paul, this was a great episode, man. I always tell personal stories on this. You got to tell the quick story about the weirdness of how we met.
Yeah, so my younger son is really good at math, and one of these days I'm going to have him design out what are the chances that you and I met the way we did. So for the audience, it was the most bizarre thing. I was running PR at American Century Investments. I got an email that we were going to have a new executive coming on board at the company, and he was going to run the retail direct to consumer business. And I'm looking through this new guy's CV, and I see that he went to the University of Cincinnati. And I'm like, that's interesting. I mean, that's my hometown as well. And, this guy's from this generation where there were a lot of Cincinnatians going to UC. It's not quite that way anymore, but back then it was. And so I start Googling this guy's name, and I see that he's also on the board of trustees of the small all boys Catholic high school on the west side of Cincinnati that I went to. And now I'm thinking, okay, this is getting really weird. And I feel like I'm in an episode of Punk'd. And so I remember, guys, Jay Hummel. So I emailed Jay Hummel and I go, hey, listen, I have a feeling you're from Cincinnati and maybe we went to the same high school that's only 500 kids. And obviously you emailed me back and that was in fact the case. And we ended up working together at American Century, 600 miles away from Cincinnati, which for Cincinnatians, it might as well be the dark side of the moon. Cincinnatians don't travel
Well,
too
and
far.
as we know now, we both live in Kansas, and there's only 6 alums of the high school in the entire state of Kansas. So we are we are in a weird overlap. So
There you go. But we're going to find all those guys and we're going to meet them.
we're gonna find them. We're gonna find them. Well,
There you
thanks,
go.
man. I really appreciate you coming on. This was a great episode. Um, hopefully you'll come on again, and we'll continue to talk because I can't tell you how many questions I get on digital media
Mhm.
content. How do I grow? And your expertise is so valuable to the viewers. So thanks for coming on.
You bet. Happy to be here.
Hey, Paul, before you go, how do viewers get in touch with you if they want to do business or connect?
There's a bunch of ways. So you can find me on LinkedIn under my name. I'm pretty active there. You can find out more about my company at www.meetavra.com, or you can email me at paul@meetavra.com.
That's awesome, man. Thanks again for being here, and we'll hopefully you'll come back.
You bet.
Thanks for watching today. We'll see you next time on the deep dive.